And so everyone, thank you guys so much from Tamale. Wow, that's really, thank you so much for joining. My name is Mira, and today is going to be very interesting. I hope you guys bring out your notepads because listen, we are talking to successful women in STEM here. And I myself, I have my notepad ready and I'm ready to literally jot down all the goodies that they'll be sharing because one thing people fail to realize is not only do you need to tell your story when you are applying to grad school, you would continuously need to tell your story. Whether you are already in grad school, whether you are an undergrad, wherever you are, you would continue to tell your story. If you're applying for a fellowship, if you're applying for a scholarship, if you're applying for anything, a position, like you need to tell your story. So they are here to tell us how they successfully told their story to land them in the top companies here in the US, as well as getting into the top schools in the US. So without further ado, I would say welcome to our two engineers, PhDs, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Samira, for having us. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone from Ghana. Wow. So happy to have you guys in the virtual room with us. We're so excited to be here. We are the Savvy After Success, and we're excited to talk to you. By the end of this webinar, there are a couple of things that we want to leave you with, right? So the first thing is tips for telling your unique story in written documents. So we're going to share just a snippet of our stories. And then we also want to resource you at the end. So tell you about resources available to you through the SASS, okay? And so we're going to begin this by kind of storytelling about what we do, right? And what we do for our clients. We're going to use the example of one of our clients from Cameroon, West Africa. I am from Cameroon, so I'm really passionate about this story. We had a client come to us towards the end of last year about this time. She had a desire to get admission to study for her master's in public health in the United States, okay? So she had had a medical background. She had done some service work in Cameroon. She wanted to get her MPH in the United States. And so what did we do for her? She came to us a little bit confused on where to begin, right? She came to us a little bit overwhelmed with the way the process was for her. And there are a couple of things that we did with her to ensure that when she was leaving, she felt empowered, she felt like she knew what she was doing, and she got the results that she desired. So some of those things include our coaching, right? So we coached our client using our proven strategies for success, some of which we're going to share with you today. We helped her to craft very unique application essays. That's our bread and butter, and we're going to talk to you about it in a little bit. And then we gave her customized and very personalized feedback on her application package, how to make her stand out so that she could secure admission. And of course, she got admission into 4 top schools in the United States. I don't know if anyone has heard about Emory University. It's one of the very big programs for public health. It's in Atlanta, Georgia, where both of us lived there for about four or 5 years. And then she also got admission into a couple of other schools. So Indiana University, Washington University in St. Louis, University of Nebraska Medical Center. And across these 4 programs, she secured over $50,000 in funding, right? We know that funding is a huge limitation for international students. And so that's one of the things that we helped her. And how did she do a lot of this was by the unique storytelling that she did in her application essays. And so we're going to share with you some of those strategies. But again, before we continue, let's go through a little bit of introduction about who we are and our personal stories. And so I'll pass it on for Dr. Chiamaka to take us through her personal journey so far.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Chiamaka and I grew up in Nigeria. Unfortunately, well, I think there's like 1 or 2 Nigerians on the call. But I grew up in Nigeria and I actually came from Nigeria to do my bachelor's in the US. And between, I guess, Nigeria and the US, I applied to several schools and got into, so again, telling your story, who you are, where you're from. I was able to get a lot of like funding opportunities in addition to just like admissions, probably about 200K total to go to school here. And eventually I picked a school and I went to Texas Tech University for college. And then from college to graduate school, I ended up applying to PhD programs in graduate school. And got into several schools. Again, tons of funding to go to grad school, and I ended up going to Georgia Tech, where I got my PhD in chemical engineering. And currently, I'm currently a research specialist in a material science company. But the key really in all of this story, right, is that throughout college, for my undergraduate, in college and then in graduate school, I was able to, tell stories that helped provide funding, basically, for my stay in the US. So that's a bit about me and who I am. Pass it back to Dr. Beatrice.
Thank you. All right. So a little bit about me. I'm originally from Cameroon, Bamenda, Cameroon. And similar to Dr. Chiamaka here, I came to the United States after high school, right? But different from her a little bit, my path started at a community college where I got a couple of scholarships during that time, to the amount of between community college and Texas Tech University, where I finally got my bachelor's degree, to the amount of over 40,000 US dollars. That significantly helped my dad, who was covering my tuition at the time, right? And then now when I was done with college and trying to figure out what do I do next, I decided to go to graduate school, get a master's and PhD. And I did that at Georgia Tech. I applied to two separate schools, Georgia Tech and the University of Michigan, and I got complete full funding to the amount of $140,000. Decided to go to Georgia Tech where I acquired my PhD. And then during that time, I also applied for research fellowships in my time at graduate school. One of those very unique fellowships was the American Association of University Women. It's a very important fellowship that you can get as a woman in STEM, and I was so excited to get that. And one key thing to getting some of that funding was storytelling. And then even after you graduate, right, you may not need funding at that time, but you need to secure a job, and you need to be able to storytell to during your interviews to get a job. So I currently work as a research engineer at Boston Scientific. That's a little bit about me, okay? And so now let's kind of get into the meat of the webinar. And as we go through this, if people have questions, make sure that you drop those questions in the chat so that at the end we can get back to you with those. So Dr. Chiamaka is going to take us through why storytelling and how to do it the right way.
Okay, next slide. All right, so I was thinking about this throughout the week, right? How do I tell you that storytelling is important? And one of the things that we're able to come across is that, as you know from your lifetime, right, there are certain people that tell stories in a way that just transports you to a different place. So you think about the stories you heard as a child, or like if somebody's telling you like really good gist, you know that like you can put yourself in that situation. And really, that's what you want to do when you write any essay for scholarship, admission, or fellowship. You want to be able to tell a story that can transport the person who is reading your packet to a new place. So your goal really as an applicant is to take all the things that makes you like unique, your background. If you grew up in an African country, if you went to school for your first degree in an African country, take all of those things, your expertise, if you've done research, if you've worked. And then also in all of that, you also need to take your need for funding, right? And that makes you who you are. You want to be able to wrap that up together. And when somebody reads your essay, you want them to be transported to the next slide. Basically, when I read your essay that is giving me all these things, I want to be able to walk in your shoes. Like your goal really is to convince that person looking at the essay to be like, okay, this person really needs the money. And look at all these great things they've done. So I want to be able to walk in your shoes so that at the end of the day, we can consider you the best person or applicant for that award. That's your job. Anytime you have an essay to write, that's what you always want to do. Okay, so what does that actually look like? There are many ways you can do this, and every essay is like sort of unique, right? The essay you write to go from high school, secondary school to college is different from the one you write to go from college to graduate school. It's also different from the one you write when you're looking for a scholarship or a fellowship or a grant. They're all very different. But there are a few key things that you can do to help set you apart. And that's sort of what we want to address here. Like really our goal is that by the end of this, you can start to think about essays as frameworks and not be intimidated by them when you have to write them. So the very first thing you want to do, of course, is to read the essay prompt. What is the essay asking you for, right? Is it asking you to talk about a time when you went through like a particular struggle? Is it asking just who you are in general? Or is it asking you to talk about like a particular experience that you have so that you can see if you fit into this program? So review the prompt. But then once you do that, there are a couple of questions you need to ask yourself. So like, think about who you are. Think about why you want to receive this funding. So if like you came to me to ask me for money, right? And I give you this money, what are you going to do with it? How can you convince me that you need this money? And then you can think about like, how are you sure that you need the money, or like you're trying to go to graduate school? Why will you be successful? So specifically, if you think about writing an essay for graduate school, like why will you be successful? You want to be able to demonstrate, to talk about why you'll be successful so that you can convince somebody to give you this money. Where do you want to be in a few years? And then how would this funding, so if I give you the money, what would it do for you, right? How does this funding fit into your long-term goals? So those are some of the things you need to start thinking about before you start writing your essay or any of scholarships and things like that. All right. So to give you just a couple of tips, like specific tips to do, and we use this with our clients all the time. It's really the best way that we've seen works. And so I've said like the first thing is you want to be able to use impact statements when you write your essay. So a lot of times when we work with people, we see that people tend to tell like generic stories, right? So you say, oh, maybe something like, oh, I am inspired by this thing that happened to me as a child, or just say like, oh, like I did XYZ like when I was in like university. What you really want to do is like take it from like a generic statement and bring it down, make it very specific, right? So during like in my time in university as a fourth year student, I participated in XYZ. This XYZ taught me like ABC. And because of ABC, I am now MNO, something like that. Like you want to get very specific in your essay so that you can communicate, you know, what it is that makes you stand out. The second thing you really want to do is to tell a story. Again, I just told you that stories take people places. So you want to be able to tell a story when you write any essay. And I think, you know, let's think specifically about graduate school. When you do a graduate school application in particular, there are many different components of it, right? So there's your letters of recommendation, your resume, your transcripts, all those things like help make you a successful applicant. But your essay is the one time you actually have to tell a story, your own story in your own voice. And so you really need to make sure that you transport whoever reads that statement into understanding who it is that you are. So tell a story, pick a story, write a theme around it, and then like, demonstrate who you are. And then the third thing really that we want to communicate is to use the STAR method. Look, every paragraph in every essay you write will be different, right? Depending on what the essay is for, every paragraph will be different. What you do in the introduction, and we don't have, you know, we can give 2 hours worth of seminar on how to write each paragraph. We're not going to do that. But for most of the essays, right, people are really looking to see like what have you done? And so for a good number of these essays, you want to use what's called the STAR method. Has anybody heard of the STAR method? Show of hands in the chat. Who has heard? Yeah, okay, you can type yes or no in the chat. Let's see. Has anybody heard of the STAR method? If you want to put something in the chat, let's see. People want to type. No? Okay, good. I see some no's. I see some yeses. All right. No. Okay, yes. Okay, great. So mixed bag. So this is perfect. So the STAR method, I think, is really, oh, I guess that's fine. The STAR method, you can go back, again, go forward. The STAR method is really a unique trick. The STAR method basically is like S is situation, T is task, A is action, and R is results. And every time you want to tell a story, like on anything, you always want to make sure you're thinking about the STAR method. So, and I'm going to demonstrate in a little bit, but you can also think about it. This trick is also useful even when you interview. Like, tell me about a time when you encounter challenges. You need to think about the situation, think about the task, like what did you do? So the situation is sort of like situate people in their environment. Okay, so the time was second year in like undergraduate studies, right? Like in undergraduate, that's the situation. The task is the thing you were trying to accomplish. The action is like what you took to actually accomplish, the task, and then what were the results? Why is that important? And so we're going to do that in the next time. But before then, we're going to think about this specific prompt, right? So in this specific prompt, the theme is leadership, inclusion, and diversity. So a lot of essays, they really want to figure out why you stand out, what's important about you. How can we, like, if I give you this money or this funding to do XYZ, how will you come in and enrich like the student population? We want to create a diverse environment. And so some of the questions that they would ask you would be like, oh, have you demonstrated leadership? Outside of academics, what are you passionate about, right? So those are sort of that's the question for this next essay that I'm going to show you. Okay, so this is again an example so that when you leave here today, you have the juices going and you can think specifically about how to use the STAR method. So in this paragraph, you're really trying to demonstrate how you've done leadership throughout your time in like at any point in time. And so you can see, you can read the slide, but I'm going to read through it just briefly. So this person started off by saying, they've nurtured their passion for engineering in college and outside of the classroom. In an effort to give back to their community, they joined this organization where they currently serve as president. You can think about like, that's the situation, right? That's the situation is they're putting you in the context of when they joined this organization. It can also be the task because they're serving, as the president of this organization. So that's what they're doing in this situation. And then they go on to say, as an SB member, I've helped fulfill its mission by orchestrating and executing projects. I've also initiated different community events. Now that is the action, right? So that's like what they've done in this particular like story that they're telling you. And then they go on to say, oh, like, I've helped people in different ways, but these experiences have helped like stimulate my desire for a graduate education. That's the result. That's what they're telling you that they want you to take away from this essay. Another thing they could have done, which they didn't do in this part, is to tell you, okay, like I helped execute this project, but here are the results. Because of this thing I did, X students are now interested in going to college. X students are now, know more science than they did before. So that's by just reading this one paragraph, you've gotten an idea of, how this person has been able to like contribute to the community through these very specific things. So that's what we're trying to tell you, right? In all the essays that you write, you want to make sure that everything you say is unique to you, but also can be tangible. When I read this essay, I can say, okay, this person is a leader. This person, can lead a team. This person can organize this thing. And here's why this is important. That's always the key when you write, essays in any format. And I think that was really, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so that's just like generic. If you want to write essays, here's what you do. We've talked about the STAR method. And the last big thing, we're getting towards the end here, so we can open up for Q&A. But the last big thing that we want to leave you with is, now if you're talking about an application essay in general, so specifically college, graduate school, the first three things all apply that I said before. So like use impact statements, tell a story, use the STAR method. The next, three things can apply, just pick and choose as you go, but it's a good place if you're thinking about going to graduate school to talk about, a low GPA that you had, for instance, if you didn't do well in a particular class 1 year in like school. This is a good place where you can talk about it. There's a skill to that, but you can put it in there. But you also want to write several drafts. And this is something you also want to do anyway. Write several drafts of the essay. You do yourself a disservice. Oh my goodness. Such a disservice to only write one draft, because you can write an essay that is perfect to you. But the moment you give it to somebody else who isn't the person who wrote it, they can give you like objective feedback. And that's really one of the things we try to do. Like you want to give yourself enough time so you can write several drafts of this essay and really, really improve it. And then I like to say this, your essay is not really the time to crack jokes. Like you may be very funny, we probably all agree, but like in your essay that you want other people to read, it's not the time to crack jokes, except, it's like an essay specifically for jokes, but I digress. Use formal language, don't crack jokes, keep it kosher. Those are really some key tips we like to leave people with in order to like teach them how to really write an application essay that stands out and it can help you get all of those like funding that we talked about. So next slide.
Yeah, I'll take it on to the next slide. But before I go on, talking about resources available to you, all these tips that I mentioned and a lot more details about it is actually listed in the blog post. Winning application essay, what is that? And so some of the resources that we have are our blog posts, which is our key center on our website where we basically just share tips, resources, tricks with you. We share how to approach different situations. For example, if you're currently applying to graduate school, what does that time look like? What are the key milestones you should be thinking about? We have a blog post called Timeline for a Graduate School Application. If you're someone who is in the very early stages, I saw the survey that came up talking about some people are still looking through schools. We talked to you about how to optimize your graduate school list, for example. We talk you also through funding, right? A huge key point for international students is how am I actually going to afford to study in the United States? So we give you ideas here on scholarships, fellowships, where to look for those. How do you even select a school to apply in the United States? That's the biggest one, right? Which school do I pick to apply to? And then even after you've come into the United States or after you've received admission from several schools, you have multiple graduate school admissions. What now? How do you decide from the schools that have accepted you? So here are just a few of the blog posts that are listed on our website. There's a ton more where that came from. You should absolutely, absolutely check it out. And then the second thing set of resources that we want to leave you with is if you're someone who is very early on in the stages of applying to schools, you're not sure where to begin, we have an ultimate guide for a US search and selection. It's basically your starting point if you want to study abroad in the United States. What schools do I go after? How do I actually search for these schools? We have a step-by-step guide on how to tackle that. And then second to that is for people who are applying to graduate schools, a huge portion of that is you need to email professors. You need to email people to write you letters of recommendation. You need to email professors that you could potentially work for. You need to email your department to ask them questions about it. How do you actually write those emails? How do you sound professional in those emails? How do you get the attention of the person that you need to read those emails? And so we have a complete email guide for you. This email guide has template emails and sample emails from those templates that you could use for your specific situation. And then at the end, as a bonus, we have 14 questions you should ask current or past graduate students, and how do you network with them? What are the questions you should be thinking about before you get yourself into a school or in a lab that you don't know if you want to be there or not? Okay, so those are a few of the resources that we provide for you. The other thing is our website. So for those that are currently on, you can scan this QR code that will give you immediate access to our website. There you'll see a couple of tabs about us if you want to read more about our stories and our journeys. Our blog is listed on the very top of the website. And then, of course, the services that we offer. Outside of these resources, we do one-on-one mentorship and coaching with potential clients. And that's specifically for those that want more of a little bit of hand-holding or more of a touch point of, okay, how do you actually get that expert guidance? How do you work with someone that already has done this before that can guide you to achieving the success that you want? In the beginning of this webinar, we talked through the story of our client that worked with us last year. That was just one example of many, okay? Many results that we've gotten for our clients. And so with that, we're actually gonna pause and take questions, right? We wanted this webinar to not be too much of information being thrown at you. We want to be able to engage with you and actually answer the questions that you have live. And so you can scan this QR code if you want to meet with us after this session, or you can ask your questions in the Q&A box, as Mira mentioned, and we want to take those questions live.
Thank you so much to both of you actually for a very detailed but swift, like presentation. And I really appreciate the fact that the STAR methodology or the STAR method was actually mentioned, because like I said, this storytelling skills is not even only for grad school. So I really hope that everybody is able to learn from multiple facets of life, even if you probably or most definitely use this for your applications when you were in grad school already. So it's this is a webinar that you would need throughout your journey, not only to get in, but to be in and be successful whilst in, right? So guys, I guess the Q&A has already started. And if you want to ask a question live, you can just raise your hand and we will what's it called? We will just like call up on you to ask your question. But for now, someone had already gone ahead and asked the question on via email. So if you could please answer that question whilst people wrap up, get their questions ready, warm up to asking their questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you want me to read the question out loud, Chiamaka?
Sure, yes.
All right. So this person had a couple of questions. The first one said, which courses have available jobs after graduate studies in the US for a person with a Bachelor's of Science in agribusiness background?
Right. So we can tell you that for that person, agribusiness is an interesting field. So I looked it up earlier on today, but it's basically combining science and economics. And it really depends on which path you want to go. I mean, as we all know, the US has a lot of jobs. But for someone in agribusiness, I'm thinking you could go into like the health industry, the food industry. It just depends on what it is, that which of these things are your draw. So which courses have available jobs? Really open. You could go down the business route. You could do like MBA. You could do, you can go down the management path. You can do some management courses. You can go do like health informatics or data informatics and go down, that science route. So tons of options, just depending on what is most interesting to you.
Yeah. And then I can take the second question here. It says almost all US universities require the GRE or the GMAT scores for a Master's of Science in Agricultural Economics. How do I go about it? So the GRE and GMAT are a general requirements for a lot of schools, and there are some schools that sometimes will waive that requirement. But what we generally advise our clients to do is to take the GRE and GMAT, because think about it, this is a standardized test that kind of evens out the playing field and helps the school to compare who you are as a candidate to students from China, students from Europe, students from all across the world, so that they know how you fit from an academic perspective. Okay, so if you have the time, practice, register for the exam and take the exam, get a great score on that test, and it's absolutely going to help you in your admission decision and in the path towards admissions. But if you're someone who is like, you don't want to take the test, you can absolutely spend more time researching schools that are waiving that requirement and then go ahead and apply to those schools. But I would say that could potentially limit you. Yeah.
I personally have a question now that you're talking about like the schools, because if you don't mind touching on that part before we actually move to the next question, a lot of schools are now waiving so many standardized tests, and I know like they waive like the English proficiency already, which is a little bit fair, but it's like now that they waive a lot of the standardized tests, would you say it makes the competition higher and then they don't actually end up taking a lot of students because of that? Like, what would you say is the, like, how do they navigate not requesting standardized tests?
So I can jump in. It's so new, right? It's just been in the last 2 years that schools have started doing this. So I think the data, we don't have enough data yet to see sort of what those ramifications are. But I think it is hard, because now if you remove the factor of numbers, you're leaving it to the admissions committee, 4 or 5 people to sort of look at a package and decide how strong this student is. So it makes that process for them harder. But I think the key, and this is the schools, really is on the schools to be able to come up with their own metrics. So whether this is your transcripts, where that also has numbers, right? Your recommendation letters. I'm sure the schools all have an internal system where they now try and rank all the different components. But it is a lot harder for a school, to select people now if you like take away standardized tests. We'll see. It's still too early to see how it's going to impact people, but we'll see.
Yeah. And the only extra thing I was going to add on there is that only reemphasizes the power of your application essay, right? So if they take out this standardized test requirement and all you have to demonstrate how good of a candidate you are is your transcripts, which you no longer have control over because your results are what they are, the main thing that you really have control over is this application essay and how you can prove to the admissions committee that you're a great fit for that program. And so how you tell that story, the the strength of that essay could heavily influence that admission decision there. Yeah. All right, let's see. I think the last part of that question was any suggestions on some graduate courses options I can source? Yeah. I think Chiamaka, you had already mentioned
Right. So
an MBA.
I mentioned some. You can go down the business route. You can do an MBA, Master's in Finance. You can go down the management route. You can go down the science route. It really, again, depends. Really, like America is truly a lot of opportunities. People come here and do all kinds of things and end up great. And I think it just really depends on what it is you're interested in. Generally, we tell people like STEM, so sciences, like courses around science, technology, engineering, and math, have more opportunities for jobs afterwards. But really, if you're a determined person, you can succeed even, and you can get a job even in other areas. So don't limit yourself.
All right. So the word here is don't limit yourself. There's one question in the chat that says if you didn't have a leadership, if you didn't have a leadership role when you were in school, how do you start? And I guess this is about like tailoring your story. How do you then make your story more worthwhile and worth reading and getting you there?
Yeah, I could take that one.
Okay.
So if you don't have a formal leadership role, you got to think about what other experiences do you have, right? Have you volunteered in your church community? Have you followed your mom to her meetings and helped, take notes during the meeting? Like what other experiences have you had that can speak to you doing things outside of school, right? That can speak to you working with multiple people, because basically that's what leadership is. You're influencing a decision by working with multiple people. You're collaborating with multiple people to accomplish a common goal. And so think about what other experiences have you had that are along the lines of the skill sets that you get from being a leader, and can you explain those sets of experiences? Yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Nothing else to add.
Also, to that person, I'd like to add in addition to everything Beatrice said, is you need to actually look within, because I remember there was this person I was like assisting in writing a personal statement, and like they didn't have any, leadership role. And then I asked about I asked, didn't you teach your siblings their homework? And she was like, oh yes, I taught my siblings and our neighbors' kids, homework. And I'm like, that is a leadership role. That is something you can definitely put in. It's all about wording it in the right way. So you need to look within, and us Africans have a tendency to, like humble ourselves and not talk about like, it's called humble bragging in your personal statement or like telling your story, because they need to know. So the things you kind of like you don't even pay attention to is what people are actually talking about. And you go on LinkedIn especially, and you're like, wow, these are things I do. I can also talk about them, right? So it's like you need to humble brag in your storytelling, if I should add. Yeah.
Honestly, I feel like you could have gotten this webinar from LinkedIn, because people on LinkedIn really tell stories wonderfully.
Absolutely. Like you see a story and the way it's worded, you'd be like, wow, I thought you just invented electricity. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so Alidu Yaku is asking, oh no, sorry, we already answered that. Omul Katum, thank you so much for joining. I know her personally. What courses would you recommend for someone who has a bachelor's degree in HR and can venture into the health sector? So from your experience, the person has HR and they wanted to venture into.
My follow-up question to that would be like, what do you want to do in the health sector? Do you want to do something like data analytics? Do you want to actually be managing in the health sector? That kind of steers like what course you want to take. So for example, you could get a master's degree in data analytics or data science if that's something that you want to kind of skew towards. You could also do work in project management if that's something that you're interested in. You can also go get an MBA or look into management within that human resources side of the health industry. So there's a variety of things you could do. Absolutely. Yeah. So just a few suggestions.
Okay, Omo, your question has been answered. If you want to add more to that, you can do so, and Beatrice will do well to, like, guide you on how to go about that. Selma Salisu is asking, does your guidance and counsel through the application process come at a cost?
Chiamaka, do you want to take that one?
Yes. Everything comes at a cost, right? But no, we have free, which is why we try and put out a lot of resources. We have like absolutely free resources you can read. You can also book like a free 15-minute call where we can sit down and like really talk through sort of what are you going through. So we have a ton of free resources, and we have time that is free, right? Like the discovery call is absolutely at no cost. And then we also have, if you want a bit more guidance and like coaching, we have some paid services too. So yeah, all across the spectrum from free to paid.
Yeah, the process could be really, really daunting. So guys, if you want in-depth help and like detailed from beginning to end, it definitely would come at a cost, because these are career women and they have like so much time focused on other things. So it's like, if you want them to help you all through from beginning to end, it's definitely going to come at a cost. They say time is money, right? So it's like it's going to come at a cost. So Sunset joined in about 15 minutes ago. It seems, oh, this is recorded. So those of you who actually registered would get the recording. It's only people who registered will get the recording. Also, can I apply to grad school in my final year without complete results, or do I wait after? That's very interesting. I would like for you guys to take it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Here in the United States, college students that apply to graduate school right after college, they do so in their final year. And so the one thing that you want to make sure is that your transcripts covers kind of the details of the courses that you've already taken. And then if the school does decide to admit you, they'll ask for your final transcripts after you've already graduated. So I think it's possible, yeah, to do that.
Yeah, no, I think the key is definitely to make sure that you will have graduated before you start, because they need your final transcript. Now, depending on where you are, so in Nigeria, for instance, we find that a lot of people think about applying to graduate schools after that in the period they're doing the mandatory youth service. So you can do also, and we have a client currently who's finishing up his master's in public health and also applying, right? He hasn't finished yet, but he's going to be finished by the time the admissions come through. So yes, you can apply before you finish.
Yes, to add my 2 cents, I believe you definitely can apply. Personal story, I attended UCC in my third year was when I started looking, and I believe first semester of my fourth year was when I applied, and I actually got in, and I deferred my admission to when I finished my national service and I started. So you can definitely, a lot of people now are opting not to do national service. I'm not advising you. I'm just telling you.
food for thought.
Like, national service, even if I do car, what am I gaining from it? So it's up to you to determine if you want to do national service or not. But I have my certificates, it's still there. But at the end of the day, just know that you definitely can apply. And if you get in, or when you get in, you can seek to defer for 1 year. And the national service is obviously 1 year. So you can use that 1 year to gather your money and gather yourself, and then attend when you accept your admission and just start your enrollment.
That's very interesting, Mira, though, because in the last year, I have heard and because admissions is an ever-living cycle, right? Things change. I know in the last year it's been harder I've seen people who like try and defer the admission, and the school is like, no, we're not doing that. So it really depends on the cycle, but it doesn't hurt to, I guess, try and get in and see and make a decision from there.
Yeah. One more reason why I decided to defer again was because the funding wasn't enough. Because I didn't go with the early application. I applied literally like the last minute. So the funding wasn't, because the early decisions kind of carry better funding than the later application. So that was one of the kind of key reasons why I decided to defer. But then again, every situation is different. You just need to be very sure read your terms and conditions, reading between the lines really well to know what works best for you. Zoera, thank you so much for joining us. She's asking, can one apply for a research assistantship program without any publication? And I think this is a very good question.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. Absolutely, you can. I secured funding from undergraduate when I did not have a single publication to my name. Depending on the program you're applying to, depending on the requirements of the school that you're applying to, some just want to see your undergraduate results. They want to see that you're a hardworking student. They want to see that the potential of where you can go, right? And publications is just one thing that you can acquire while you're in graduate school. Is not an absolute requirement. Yeah.
Yeah, I think just to add, really, the goal is to show that you have potential. I know many people who have never done any research in their life, in undergraduate, and apply to graduate school and get in with full funding, right? Because you can demonstrate that you have a passion and you have potential and a demonstrated track record of finishing tasks, no matter what they are. So potential is really all you need to demonstrate that you can get into graduate school.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to add to the discussion about applying early was, in recent years, we've seen a delay in the US visa process, like scheduling an interview date with the embassy, and some people end up missing their date of enrollment because they couldn't secure a visa interview early. So I would advise that people should always just apply early, because there are a lot of delays that could come about that you do not have plans for. And so the earlier you apply, the better for you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually, talking about applying early, I actually have a YouTube video specifically where you talked about like the influence of applying earlier. It's called early application or GPA. Like, what are the key factors? I'll put the link in the chat if you guys are interested in watching that as well, because I feel like early application is very underrated, and we should definitely take advantage of the fact that they are opening up the portal for you to apply early, because they tend to like prioritize those early applications as opposed to people who have the later cycle of applications as well. So guys, if you want to ask a question, we have about 15 minutes left. So if you want to ask a question, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask, or put the question in the chat box. And let's utilize our last 15 minutes judiciously, right? Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I just dropped our website in the chat in case people couldn't scan that QR code and they wanted to go to it directly.
I guess I want to hear, okay. We have a question, but I guess while we're gathering questions, I want to hear from the people on the audience. You can put it in the chat or come off and tell us, but what for you is the hardest challenge that you're currently facing when you're thinking about, applying, if you're thinking about applying to schools in the US, right? What is the hardest thing that you're facing right now?
That's a good one, because it's so many, it's so multifaceted, and people think it's easy until they get into it and they realize it's too hard. And personally, from assisting people, guys, please put your hardest part, but I just felt like I should break the ice by sharing this story. I feel like people think it's easy until they get in and they realize, whoa, this is a lot. Like searching for programs. They're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know how to email professors. Oh, wow, I need to write statements. Wow. Oh, wow, I need to upload CV. I don't even have a CV. Oh, wow. And it becomes so overwhelming, and they end up putting an application that is so subpar. And now the application portal has become so competitive. So I feel like people should, on the SASS plug website, I feel like the resources there are so helpful, given the fact that you have a timeline. One resource I find really, really helpful is the timeline from searching for schools, gathering your materials. Guys, not to even talk of requesting for transcript, bro. Okay, guys, it's a lot. So the earlier you start, the better, because, you know, like requesting for transcript is not like the clearinghouse here in the US. You have to either have somebody on ground that is going to ship that transcript for you from the university itself, because it has to be sealed, right? And it's like you are probably not in the same state or region that you went to school. So it's like you'll be going back and forth begging, and it's a lot. It's a lot. So please, exactly. So that's the resource in the chat box, the timeline for grad school application. I find that really, really helpful. So people have actually started putting in their challenges, and hopefully we can address them before we leave in the next 12 minutes.
Yeah. I think starting from the top here, Salma says, I've applied to go to 2 schools now. I got admission to 3 schools, but no funding, and I really need to pull through for next year. I think, Salma, I'll be interested in talking to you a little bit more on which schools did you select to apply to, and did the school specifically say on the website that they have funding for graduate students, right? That's the first part. And then secondly, if they said that, did you actually reach out to some professors that you're interested in working with and ask them if they do have funding, right? So you cannot just apply to a school assuming they'll have funding for you. You have to do the research by yourself to see if you're throwing, like you're kind of throwing your net into something that actually has fish or doesn't have fish. If not, you're spending all that time doing stuff that is not going to yield any return on investment. So that's one thing that I would say for people who are looking at schools. Do the schools say they offer funding for their graduate students? You want to know that before you're devoting that time to doing all that work. And then Iche says, it's a daunting process, I must say, but getting funding is the most tasking. Okay. This funding piece, I think we keep getting back to it, just how much of a problem it is. Yeah. The kinds of schools you're applying to, the departments in those schools, and knowing beforehand that they offer funding is big. Yeah.
Yeah, and I want to add that, like, because sometimes you really do have to take a leap of faith, because sometimes like you can apply to get into a program and maybe that year like they just don't have funding for you. And there are many different tactics. People, you can come in if you have enough money for just like that 1 year. You can come in, and then you can start to look for like other sort of ways for funding. So you can either maybe there, because you're now here, you can start to talk to the department chair to see if there's a teaching assistantship that you can apply to, right? So TAing. There may be other like research assistants in other departments that you can also apply for that can also help, pay some of your tuition and maybe give you a stipend. There are also external like scholarships or fellowships that you can apply for, to also help you with that. So while like, yes, it's super important. I mean, it's great to know how much you're going to get before you come in. But sometimes I've seen it for many people in like the X amount of years I've been in the US. I've been here a bit now. Well, like you can come in with like enough funding for that year. And in that year, like I promise you, you can find other like ways to fund your education. America is truly the land of opportunities if you know how to work.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I wanted to add a quick, I know me and my personal stories, but I feel
Girl,
like
go for
personal
it.
stories, you never know, right?
Yeah.
When I was doing my master's, I was looking for a summer gig, like a summer research to fund my summer stay in my like hostel, blah, 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 because it's fall funding and spring funding and no summer funding. I worked with the Department of Building and environmental technology. Please ask me, what is chemistry looking for in Department of Building and Environmental Technology? I literally went to the lady I was looking, and she was Ghanaian, which made it easy. I was like, hey, these are my skills. I can do SEM, I can do so many chemical characterization. I don't know what projects you guys are working on, but these are my skill sets. And I got some cool funding that summer from helping her characterize her cement, her biochar, and all of those things. So guys, you get in, even if you have 1 year funding, get in and open your eyes and look around. It's called interdisciplinary funding. You will get some, okay? So work hard for the first year and you get in and you definitely get some.
Yeah. Let's see. Telling your story, the SOP, your statement of intent, what should one consider? So if you're listening to this webinar, right, the first, I think 30 minutes of this webinar kind of covered a lot of that. If you need more insights on that, I think I can link the winning application essay, what is that blog post, and that should be very helpful there. Chiamaka, do you have any additional insights there?
No, I think that's good. We talked about it earlier, but there's more resources, and then you can always come back and chat, and we can sort of give you, even more tips.
Yeah. The process feels very overwhelming, and honestly, I feel like there are chances of getting picked out of 1 million applicants that are applying for the same thing, so it's very overwhelming.
I just want to jump in and correct your impression. There are actually not 1 million people who apply. I know it's not, and it's not even that. It's sometimes truly it's not as many as you think, because applying is a lot of work. So like it's not a lot of people who are applying. But the thing is actually a trick. The thing we always advise clients is that there are all kinds of schools in the US, right? There are, the top 10 programs, but there are like top 100 programs that are just as good. Every school actually has a strength in something. And so we typically advise people to look at your credentials, honestly, truly, like what is your GPA? How good of a student are you, like objectively? And then look at the schools, so schools typically will tell you like the class, they call it class rank, like the people that they hired, they admitted last year. Here is their average GRE score. Here is their average GPA. So take those two information, what the school says they admitted last year and what your package are, and compare yourself. And what we find is that there are typically 3 categories people fall into. You either have like what we call your rich school, like REACH. So rich is like a dream. This is a school where you've looked at their criteria, you've looked at your own. It would be hard for you to get in, but like maybe it's your dream school, so you put it on your list. But then there's also what they call a match school. Match as in MATCH. A match school is a school where you've looked at their admitting class, you've looked at your criteria. It's a match. Like, under all circumstances, and like graduate applications aren't always one-to-one, right? So you can be a school, you can apply to a school that is a match and not get it. It's not personal. But under normal circumstances, you'd be like, I should be able to get into the school. So you put a lot of schools on that list in your package. And then there's what we like to, the third category is a safety school. And I hesitate to say safety school because like no school is really a safety school. You can apply to a safety school and not get in, like it's not, like, again, everything is something different. But let's say that you've looked at their admitting class and you're like, okay, I think I have a really good chance of getting in here. And maybe slightly, higher, but really good chance. So it's safety school. So now what you've done, right, is that you've positioned yourself in such a way that you have a wide range of schools you're applying to, all have different strengths, and you have different chances of getting in. And now you've increased your chances, because your chance in like school A versus school B will be very different, and they'll be to your advantage. So that's like really one trick when people come to like work with us, I usually give them, is that make sure you apply to a wide range, like, and it doesn't have to be like 10 schools, just like in the schools you apply to, even if they're 5. Make sure they're different on this, your match, your reach versus your safety school. And that sort of increases your chances. So don't get overwhelmed. There are tips and tricks for like how to pick a school and how to apply and all these different things.
Yeah, absolutely. In summary, you want to apply to a school that you have chances of getting into, or like a diverse list of schools, some that you know that, okay, I think I can get into this school. Some that you're like, okay, I'm actually stretching here, but maybe I would. And sometimes the GRE is one thing to help you qualify if you can get in or not.
Right.
Given that
and I guess,
you don't have.
Sorry, go finish.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, but I see that there are undergraduates on the call too, or people who are going to be applying to like bachelor's. There's also the SATs, so the Standardized America, that's like also another standardized test that you can do to help compare you. So just putting it out there.
I guess my 2 cents that I wanted to add here is I know Umi, you were talking about how it's 1 million applicants, and I'm agreeing with Chiamaka, like it's not 1 million applicants, it's less than 1 million obviously, but when the schools open up, no GRE, no application fee, no anything, it's like enter, everybody's like so much. So it's like you now have to distinguish yourself. And if it says no GRE and you have a GRE, obviously you will now be placed higher, right? And if it says no something and you have it, and it says know this, but you already have it, I feel like it's going to definitely make you be on top of the list, and you have an amazing SOP, you have a GRE score that is well, you know. So when these schools say no GRE, no application fee, sometimes these schools are, it's two ways. Sometimes these schools are not the schools you should be looking at. Sometimes it's the school you should be looking at because you want to try and get in and be above all these applicants, right? Okay. So
there's
yeah.
one question I want to get into real quick that I think is a different dimension of something we haven't talked about. If you don't have any experience either in your undergraduate thesis or internships that's related to an area of interest that you want to go into, something that I've found that has worked for people is that, like, is it just an interest, as in is a passing idea, or have you taken some like courses on like Coursera, some like, you know, like webinars or things that you've done to like improve your knowledge in that area? That's another very good way to demonstrate that, you know, you have an interest, you've already started putting in some work in this area that you're interested in. So it's not always a one-to-one, right? You don't always have to have experience or like really experience in the particular area you're thinking of going to for your graduate work. Or like, can you make the connection for the person, right? Can you show them how that experience that you have can actually help you in this graduate work, or like help them make the leap? So
All
I
right,
guess
let's
Bernice
see.
was saying my major challenge is SOP. We already talked about it extensively on this webinar. SOP. I guess Bernice again is saying, how do I go about my SOP? And then Beatrice has already kind of like given her a link to schedule a one-on-one talk meeting with you guys. Guys, I guess we have 1 minute. Any closing remarks? And I would like to say thank you, but any closing remarks and any last minute advice to our participants today?
Yeah, I could go first. First of all, thank you for having us. Can you guys still hear me?
we
I know
can hear you.
my
Your
video
video
is
is
frozen. I
frozen,
don't
but
know
we
what's
can hear
happening
you.
here.
Just go
But
for
yeah,
it.
no, thank you guys so much for having us and listening to all the strategies that we've shared. This is really work that we're very passionate about. We want to see Africans like us come into the United States and actually succeed. So we don't just help you to come in, right? We make sure that once you come in, you actually get everything that you need out of being in the United States. And then we successfully transition from students to professionals in the United States. And so that's another thing that we try to help our clients with. So think about it as your all encompassing big sisters that are pretty much just helping you to be successful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess for me, just don't limit yourself, right? Their possibilities are endless. Yeah.
So much to everyone. I really appreciate these ladies right here. Like Beatrice was saying, both of them are all encompassing big sisters, because I can attest to the resources that they've shared. Even to me personally, I cannot thank you guys enough, and I'm still learning from them. So please go on their website, get the resources from the blog, and if you can, schedule a one-on-one call so they can actually make out time out of their busy schedule to, like, you know, help you succeed. And with that, I would say have a great weekend, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.